So thank you, Enrique, and also thank you all for your warm welcome. I'd also like to thank Ed Valacorde. He's actually the pastry chef here at the Westin Hotel. He was the person who actually made the caramel apple pound cake that was served at your table this morning. I hope you liked it. It actually was a recipe I developed for dialysis patients. So see, we can put flavor back into the patient's diet. So my story takes food and kidney disease and blends them together like a perfect chocolate souffle. My love for food began as a small child on my grandparents' farm, just south of Spokane, Washington. My grandmother was an excellent cook, wonderful baker, and it was my favorite place to be as a small child growing up. I remember sitting down at a Sunday dinner table and my grandfather pointing out to me that every plate and platter of food on their table was either raised or grown on their farm. What a perfect beginning for a future chef. My grandparents lived the farm-to-table lifestyle. So my professional career actually began in a gas station. I was just 13 years old, and my dad got me a part-time job. I didn't even know I was looking for a part-time job. So I was the boy who would run out to your car, pump your gas, wash your windshield, and check your oil, all so you wouldn't have to get out of your driver's seat. Believe it or not, it was a job I hated. Oh. So at the end of my first shift, bored, dirty, and reeking of gasoline, I walked up Main Street for a couple blocks to what is Ellie's Cafe. I walked in and asked Ellie, the owner, mother of one of my classmates, "Would you please hire me?" She hired me to wash dishes, bus tables, and fry hamburgers, and I couldn't have been happier. The beginning of a culinary career. In fact, by the age of 13, I was already a pretty good cook. I had respectfully kicked my mother out of the kitchen because I was so tired of her throw-together meals of a working mom. So I would come home from school, do my homework, and then get so excited to get in the kitchen and take on the challenge of a brand new recipe for our family dinner. By the time I got to high school, I was certain of two things. I knew I loved cooking, and I knew I wanted to be a teacher. And as fate would have it, I was able to bring those two together. So after high school, I went to the culinary arts program at Spokane Community College. I spent 2 years there, and then I went on to another cooking program at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, where my chefs were from around the world, and they all had unique cooking techniques, and they all had thick accents that I could not understand. In the summers, I would come back to Idaho, and I was the sous chef at a private country club, where fortune would have it again. I met a cute-looking female bartender who actually became my wife later on. And I have to tell you, in restaurants, cooks and bartenders get along very well. Bartenders are hungry, and cooks are always thirsty. So after graduation, I decided to trade the subclimate of Alberta, Canada for the nice, warm beaches of Maui, where I worked my way up from a dining room waiter to a banquet captain to becoming the operational director of the Maui Westin Hotel on Ka'anapali Beach. But as much as I loved living in paradise, I'm a Washington boy at heart. So when a teaching position opened up at Spokane Community College in the culinary arts program, I jumped at it in 1981. I returned home and have been teaching ever since. I teach in a culinary arts program, I teach hotel restaurant management students, and I also teach professional baking students. So for more than 35 years, I've loved teaching my craft to students. And in the first 20 years, life was good. My family was happy and healthy, and so was I. But around the time I turned 40, I noticed that my energy level was draining. And I need to stop right here and introduce you to two important people, Kevin and Carl. Kevin and Carl are my kidneys, and like most chronic disease patients, we have a tendency to name our organs. So after 2 years of decreasing energy levels, I was totally exhausted at the end of the school year. I knew something was wrong, but I was in denial. So just before school started, our family went up to a lakeside resort in northeastern Washington, and we had dinner in this rustic restaurant where the food is excellent. It's so tasty because it's laden full of salt. And poor Katie over there is already spinning because I'm talking about salt. Okay. So after that dinner, I woke up the next morning with half of my face swollen, and I had my first migraine headache. So for the next 4 months, I was in and out of a doctor's office being treated for symptoms, migraines and high blood pressure. I was never being treated for the actual cause. Eventually, a lab test showed that I was spilling a ton of protein in my urine. Kevin and Carl weren't doing their job. So this spilling of protein actually causes patients to produce foamy urine. So you can do your own home test on this, okay? But I also learned a new skill that I was very, very proud of. I can blow bubbles in the restroom. So when the diagnosis actually came, I told the doctors, plug up Kevin and Carl. Stop the leaking of protein. Stop that spillage, and my life returns to normal. But of course, it wasn't that simple. I had totally crashed and ended up in the emergency room before I could even actually see a kidney doctor. I was hooked up to a morphine pump, and I was being tested for such extreme high blood pressure I could hardly move. So after about 17 hours of testing, they admitted me into the hospital, and I'll never forget my first lunch in the hospital. It was a roast beef sandwich with horseradish sauce. I thought it was pretty good for hospital food. I immediately crashed after lunch, still not connecting food and kidney disease. So Kevin and Carl were diagnosed with minimal change disease. It's a kidney condition that's common among people of Scandinavian descent, which I am, but it's typically diagnosed in children. So I like to joke, I reached puberty at age 40, and my midlife crisis was a kidney disease. My wife's actually much happier that it was a kidney disease than not the traditional midlife crisis that men take. So my first nephrologist never talked to me about what I should or shouldn't eat. He put me on a high-dose prednisone and blood pressure medication, but my creatinine levels kept rising. And the prednisone created a craving in me for foods that I should never eat, but I was never told not to eat them. So even though I didn't know it at the time, my face was florid and puffy, and I looked bad and felt worse. As you can see, it's a pretty gross driver's license picture. Also, had I known I was going to be showing my driver's license picture to 800 people, I would have smiled. I eventually made my way to Dr. Katherine Tuttle, a respected nephrologist who is executive director of research at the Providence Medical Center in Spokane. She was the very first medical provider to mention to me that animal protein was hard on kidneys. Duane, yours seem to be a little stressed out. You might want to think about cutting back on the animal protein. But of course, I'm a chef, a stubborn man, and I hear what I want to hear and disregard the rest. And Dr. Tuttle is way too tactful. So I needed to be hit over the head. But even after a consult here at the U of W Medical School in Seattle, no one had yet wielded that euphemistic bat to my head. So months into my diagnosis, I started to feel even worse. And at one point, my creatinine level reached 4.99. So those of you here today who are medical providers, kidney disease patients, or loved ones of kidney disease patients, you know that magic number of 5 triggers a need for dialysis. I'd hit my most dangerous point on this journey. Then a colleague at Spokane Community College, my friend Erin, a registered dietitian, finally took that figurative swing of the bat and got my head in the game. She asked to see my labs, and in a professional medical term, I would say she freaked out. Erin said, I want to do an experiment. Let's take you off animal protein for 90 days, and let's just see what happens. I'd already gotten off of salt, thank you, Katie, and could handle that, so I thought, great, let's start today. But Erin said, no, let's wait till Monday morning. I wanted you to have the weekend to eat what you want. I heard, eat as much as you want. Well, here's my first piece of advice. If you're having trouble with your kidneys and you're not feeling very good to begin with, don't binge on pepperoni pizza with double cheese. I was so sick for the entire weekend, I didn't eat anything else, okay? But it was one of the greatest motivators because I thought, Monday morning, I woke up and I was ready to be a wannabe vegan, and this is gonna be a piece of cake. It wasn't easy, but it was the best thing I could have ever done. Within 2 weeks, I started feeling better. Kevin and Carl finally started doing their job again. And in no time, I began to review my new kidney healthy eating plan as the greatest culinary challenge a chef could have. So I began cooking meals at home. As a chef and your wife is a nurse, of course I do 98% of the cooking. So for the family meals, I started preparing 2 meals. I would cook my food and then I would cook their food. Obviously that didn't last very long. So then I approached it as their side dish became my entree. And I was able to slowly wean myself off of animal protein. But I have to tell you, I was still on prednisone, which made me crave cheeseburgers. I would drive by a fast food restaurant and just hang my head out the window of the car just to smell the grease in the air. But as those cravings continued, occasionally I am human and I would slip and I would go buy a cheeseburger. So I would take a couple bites, feel guilty, and then I would throw the meat away and eat the bun and the condiments. And what I found over time was I really enjoyed the condiments and the bread, okay? Also, my dog really enjoyed getting the burger. So I also discovered that I could go to a Mexican restaurant. This was one of my aha moments, and I felt normal again, that I could order the side dishes in a Mexican restaurant and feel normal. I could eat rice and beans. I could have guacamole with no salt added chips, okay? And I even learned to make spinach and mushroom enchiladas. And I don't miss the beef tacos or the chicken taquitos. Erin, the dietitian, was thrilled. However, as knowledgeable as she and the other dietitians are, they haven't been trained in flavor. That's what chefs are trained in. And I realized that people who are living with kidney disease need dietitians, and Northwest Kidney Centers has incredible dietitians. But they also need some help from chefs, okay? Because their diet recommendations are excellent, but patients aren't going to follow them if we can't give us flavor. So my approach to kidney health cooking began to evolve. A craving equals a substitution. I like Reuben's. Reuben's sandwiches have about 3 days worth of salt in them. So what I learned to do was to take out the corned beef, take out the sauerkraut, and replace them with braised red cabbage cooked in pickling spice. Thousand Island dressing isn't kidney friendly either, so I learned to use tofu as a base and make a sauce to go with this. And then I've also learned to make low sodium rye bread. You grill this, and it's an incredible substitute. So as time went by, this new plant-based cuisine brought my creatinine level from 4.99 to a 0.8. Today, I'm in complete remission, and I'm off all medication thanks to my diet. Dr. Tuttle, who specializes in diabetic kidney disease, was amazed. I just had an appointment with her a couple weeks ago, and I asked her to be honest with me. When you suggested this plant-based protein diet, what was your real expectations? And Dr. Tuttle said, Duane, I expected to see a slight incremental improvement in your kidneys. I never envisioned total remission. So, Dr. Tuttle invited me to accompany her to a conference sponsored by the National Kidney Foundation. Before we left, Dr. Tuttle had me create a menu of kidney-friendly food. I came up with recipes for sweet potato and black bean burritos, manicotti stuffed with Italian tofu flavoring, and a couscous and pine nut casserole. And the menu was topped off with fresh strawberries and citrus-flavored tofu cream as dessert. I was then asked by Dr. Tuttle to give those recipes to the executive chef of a 5-star resort in Scottsdale, where the conference was being held. And Dr. Tuttle had requested that this conference be served kidney-friendly food. Well, the conference organizers were a little nervous about this request. The medical people don't practice what they preach, I found out. So the conference organizers said, okay, we'll keep Dr. Tuttle happy, and the resort will make Duane's food, and we'll also order the typical hotel food as well. So the resort set up 2 buffet lines for lunch, one with my food on one side of the room, their food on the other side. During the morning meeting, I was watching the National Kidney Foundation staff at breakfast. They were hoarding bagels and muffins at their place because they were afraid if they ran out of hotel food for lunch, they were going to be stuck eating patient food. Well, guess which chafing dishes were scraped clean? It was amazing to see everyone in the room enjoying a meal that was actually kidney-friendly. And the NKF staff was on their phones calling back to New York, couldn't believe telling people they were actually eating patients' food. And that's the message I want to leave with you today. You don't need to be a professional chef. You don't even need to be an excellent amateur cook to make small changes to get food to taste good and be healthy for our kidneys, whether you already have kidney disease or you're hoping to prevent it. If you don't like to cook at all, start by filling half your plate with fruit and vegetables. Quarter the other half into the starch, rice, pasta, and the other quarter into protein. And if you want to really be creative, and this is what shocked me as a chef, vegetarians are more creative than carnivores who eat meat. When you grocery shop, you go through and you look at the meat section, and then you pick your meal. I go through the produce section and whatever's fresh. It's such a more creative way to live, okay? But also, in your own menu planning, you can implement things like beans. How about lentils from the Palouse? They're locally grown here in our own state. Portobello mushrooms or tofu is a great protein source for your diet. Now, I do want to bust a myth about tofu, gentlemen. Eating tofu does not give you man boobs. These just naturally come with age. And if you don't like the texture of tofu, which believe it or not, I don't like the texture of tofu, one thing I've learned to do is to take cashew nuts, soak them in hot water, and then drain them, and then you puree them up in your tofu in a food processor, and it makes an incredibly thick texture. And then you can season it any way you like. You can do a Southwest flavor, or I like using Italian herbs, and then make it into a stuffing and stuff like zucchini boats or pasta shells, okay? If you're trying to limit animal protein and you eat out a lot, here's my advice. Read the entire menu. Read it like it's a grocery list. But you have to look at all the side dishes with every entree on the menu. And what I do is I then take all those side dishes and request a plate be made into a meal. Now, I do caution you, this creativity can cause some surprises when the bill comes at the end of the meal. Now, the other thing, all of our chefs are usually very, very creative, and they would love a creative challenge from you when it comes to your diet. All we ask is that you give us some lead time. We'd like a couple days notice so we can be more creative. Because for some reason, you all like to eat at the same time every day. So Katie gave you many great tips earlier for nutrition and exercise. You also have been given a cookbook at your place settings by the Northwest Kidney Centers, and you can also use their website for inspiration and augment your own imagination. Katie and her colleagues are among the most respected kidney health diet experts in the entire nation. You are so fortunate to have them in your own community. 18 years after I began this journey, even though I wouldn't have chosen kidney disease, I am so grateful for having kidney disease. It made me a better cook. It helped me learn how to be more creative with flavor. It forced me to become more organized at home, at work, and in the kitchen. And I'm still learning and still experimenting after all these years. My wife, our 2 kids, and their spouses have a rating scale whenever I develop a new recipe. The best ones are deemed restaurant quality. The middle of the scale is, Dad, it's okay, it needs a little work. And then the bottom of the scale is, Dad, our dog's not even eating it. As for Kevin and Carl, we still have our daily conversations. Because of the conference in Scottsdale, the National Kidney Foundation staff published my story in that year's annual report. Kevin and Carl were so excited to get national recognition. But because my story was in the center of the annual report, Kevin and Carl now consider themselves centerfold models. So I want to leave you with one piece of advice. Take care of your kidneys by changing your diet. The key to making a perfect souffle is knowledge and timing. Making your diet healthier also requires knowledge and timing. We can all make healthier choices. You're all smarter for being here this morning and learning from Northwest Kidney Center's experts. I look at food choices as a journey. Let's create the best journey for our kidneys. Northwest Kidney Center has shared some of their recipes to help you. As for timing, like that souffle, plan ahead. People who plan ahead almost always make a healthier choice than those we make because we don't have enough time. I'm so grateful for your support for the nutrition and exercise services at Northwest Kidney Centers. Your support, believe it or not, goes way beyond the Puget Sound region. The talented and knowledgeable staff at Northwest Kidney Centers share their talents with colleagues from around the country. Your support even helps a kidney patient 300 miles away. Your support has helped millions of kidney patients that don't even know you're here in this region. So I want to just say thank you to that incredible group of people sitting over in the corner, because they are so knowledgeable and they've helped so many of us. And they do take 100 questions constantly from me, because I'm always wanting to learn more and more. So thank you. I'm very lucky. Kevin and Carl constantly remind me they need to be treated like rock stars, and that my diet should always revolve around them. So with your own personal dietary challenges, remember what Stephen King said: talent is cheaper than table salt. What separates the talented individuals from the successful ones is a lot of hard work. When I develop kidney-friendly recipes, I have more failures than any chef in the history of this country. But I'm not giving up. Patients deserve flavor. So you stick with your dietary changes. I'll stick with constantly making recipes and helping patients one recipe at a time. And we together can make and raise the quality of life for kidney patients. Thank you so much.